We are live. Welcome to Sustainability Happy Hour. I am one of your hosts. My name is Pat Keys. I'm the lead scientist at the School of Global Environmental Sustainability at Colorado State University. And I do a bunch of stuff there, but this is one of my favorite things that I get to do in that position. And this is my co-host.
Hello, everybody. My name is Micah Bennett. I am the communications specialist over there at SoGES. And
right.
Happy Friday, everyone.
Happy Friday. TGIF.
Mm-hmm.
TGIWF. It's pretty windy, so thank goodness it's Windy Friday.
That's not an acronym I am familiar with.
I just made it up now. It's done. Let's not talk.
Maybe it'll trend.
We're never going to say that again. Hashtag TGIWF.
It's going to go viral.
Trend?
Yeah.
You know what? If I say that, then my mom's going to start saying it. She'll just be like, TGIWF. I like that.
I assume your mother is a trendsetter.
She's a trendsetter. She's a trendsetter. Always has been. It's just nobody follows those trends, but that's cool.
Well,
okay. So what are we going to talk about today?
We are going to talk about some cool stuff. Our guest in about 9 minutes we're going to bring on. We are going to talk with Rob Schorr. He is a zoologist with the Natural Heritage Program. And he is also the director of Climbers for Bat Conservation.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a really fun conversation. We're going to talk about climbing and bats and how climbers can help conserve bats.
I might bring up Batman.
I think that would be in line.
That's in scope. Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah. We might talk about Batman.
Right. But before we bring him on, we are going to share some fun facts and talk about some news. And before we even do that, I'm putting something in the chat. If you are watching, it broke it up into multiple chats. Interesting. I didn't know there was a character count.
It makes it look like we have a lot of friends that way.
Anyways, if you are watching this show live, first of all, thank you. We appreciate your viewership. Yeah. We want to hear from you. Say hi, or if you have any questions or comments, drop them in that chat box on Facebook or YouTube, and we'll try to answer them live. So feel free to do that. And in the meantime, Pat, what's your fun fact?
Fun fact. So I thought of something, believe it or not, which is definitely off-brand for me. And being that we're talking about bats today, I thought of my favorite bat. And
what is your favorite bat?
My favorite bat is actually not a species of bat. It's a character in a film. It's a little bit much calling it a film. It's Batty from Fern Gully. Any Fern Gully fans out there? Batty was the sort of zany, slightly modified bat that had like an antenna in its head, played by Robin Williams. And it was. Have you seen Fern Gully? You're looking at me like you've never.
I've never seen it.
Okay, I'm tempted to just shut this whole thing down right now, and we're just going to broadcast Fern Gully live because mandatory viewing.
Is it an animation?
It's an animation. It was made by a studio that made like one movie, and I think that movie is called Fern Gully. Have you seen the movie? Have you seen the movie Avatar?
Like with the blue people?
With the blue people?
I did see that. Yes.
So Fern Gully is essentially Avatar, but animated and like 30 years earlier.
Ah, interesting.
And honestly, I feel like it's a little better.
Probably.
So here's the thing: is we got to get off this topic because I could talk about Fern Gully. I'm not kidding for a very long time. So you should tell me what your fun fact about bats is.
Well, I will look up Fern Gully as soon as we are done with this show because I do love animated film. My fun fact is also related to bats. I guess this isn't a fun fact. I guess I'll tell the story. Pat said I should tell the story. Anyway, when I was in kindergarten, we had a bat in our school, and it somehow got inside, and I just have some like very vague 6-year-old memories of my principal running around with like a net trying to catch the bat.
Amazing.
And he got it. Yeah, Mr. Westburn, go Mr. Westburn. He got the bat. And
we're probably going to learn that was the wrong way to catch a bat. But
yeah, he was not, a bat expert. He was a elementary school principal. But
yeah, right.
It was alive, and they got it outside, and it was great. Yeah,
that's great.
And yeah, that's my fun fact.
That's a good fact.
Yeah,
that's a good fact. Okay, so let's briefly touch on some kind of related news, and then we'll
Yes.
go ahead and bring Rob out here in a few minutes.
Yeah. Do you want to pull up our news story?
Yeah, I'll pull it up. All right.
So our news story today is about the recent report from the World Health Organization, and this story came out on March 29th, so it is fairly timely. The WHO released their report. It was a bit delayed, so it has been keenly. Oh, hold on. Zmox just commented.
Love it.
Said catching bats with nets is actually very common. It's called mist netting. Well, all right. Good job, Mr. Westford.
Dropping knowledge.
So they released the report after they were in Wuhan in the lab, trying to figure out where the coronavirus came from. And the main takeaway is that experts believe that SARS-CoV-2, the virus that causes COVID-19, originally came from bats. And they ranked what they do is they're ranking things in terms of likelihood. And they said that a direct jump from bats to humans was possible to likely, but then they said a scenario with an intermediate animal is likely to very likely. So if you remember, back last year, at least in my understanding was that kind of the consensus was everyone was like, oh, it came from bats. It came from bats.
Yeah.
And then it came out. They're like, well, no, it probably came from something else, a middle animal. And so experts have named some candidate animals, including mink, pangolins, rabbits, and ferret badgers. But what is important is that they still don't have anything definitive. These are all like likelihood scenarios. And so.
Ferret badger.
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
We're looking up.
And the
right here, ferret badger. Okay. Oh yes, it's a monotypic mustelid. Okay, perfect. That's what I thought.
Definitely.
Okay.
So yeah, we will put that. There's more in there. There's more in there, basically saying that the theory that it came from a lab leak is extremely unlikely. But there is some more information in there, and also has some updated numbers about coronavirus, confirmed cases, confirmed deaths, and people recovered. And so, but just more information about where coronavirus, how it got to humans.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's sort of a nice. Do you want to cover any other news, or should we just go straight to Rob now?
I think we can let's just go straight to the expert.
That's right. Okay. And then we'll make sure that all these links are in the show notes, including the Wikipedia link to ferret badgers, although maybe we won't include that. You can probably just type that in yourself. And yeah, let's go ahead and bring Rob in. I'm going to stop sharing.
All right, Rob, you ready to go?
Thumbs up.
All right, add to stream.
Here
he is.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes. Loud and clear. Welcome.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Rob. And happy Friday to you as well.
Yeah.
Thanks for the invite. And TGIWF, I guess.
Oh God, I can't believe I said that.
Look at what you've done, Pat.
Look at what I've done.
Look at what you've done.
It's springtime in Colorado. The W just comes with it.
That's true. That's a good point.
Rob, we did not prepare you for this, but do you have any fun facts you would like to share?
If I had them, they've completely left me because I was so busy Googling fern gully, ferret badger, and trying to keep up. But Coda is one of my favorites because he actually does a bat rap in fern gully.
So you've seen fern gully.
It's been a while. Pat, you're dating both of us by bringing that up.
I know, but the bat rap that's just so good.
Now
I'm just like, I can't believe we're still doing this and not all watching fern gully right now. Okay, so Rob, why don't we tried to do a little bit of an intro for you, but maybe you could expand a bit on it, talk about your roles at CSU, and kind of, all that.
Sure. I think I'm going to start the same way you did, saying that I end up doing a lot of things. So my official title within Colorado State University is Senior Research Associate, which just means I have more of a research outreach role. But my specific role within the Colorado Natural Heritage Program is, as Micah said, is zoologist. And that's just a general title that lets me dabble in conservation biology, mammalogy, population ecology, which is kind of where I end up spending a lot of my time to try and understand conservation issues for some of the species in Colorado. And just saying Colorado Natural Heritage Program probably doesn't mean a lot to the audience. I'll have to give us some background on how that organization came about. And so back in the 70s, when the Nature Conservancy was trying to assess where the last great places were, they needed an outreach group that would go out and survey for where rare species were, where they were in abundance, and try and draw those locations on a map to kind of help the Nature Conservancy prioritize what properties or areas they were going to pursue for conservation. And so that was their origin. It's evolved considerably since then, but there's a natural heritage program by some name in each of the 50 states, all the Canadian provinces, a host of Caribbean, South American countries. So it's really expanded. Now we're under the parent organization of NatureServe. But our whole mission is to try and provide information on rare species or lesser known species and communities for those land managers that have interest in doing conservation or management.
Nice. And so, but is the Colorado Natural Heritage Program tied into CSU?
It is. We're what's called a sponsored program, and we're within the College of Natural Resources. And so that sponsored program title means that we bring in projects to pay for all of our time and what we actually do.
Gotcha. And you are also the director of Climbers for Bat Conservation. Can you tell us just a little bit about that organization?
I can, but it has to start with a thank you to SoGES.
Ah.
Oh,
so,
we like those.
We like those.
Good. That makes the story even more fun. So back in 2014, a colleague of mine, Bernadette Kuhn, who was a conservation botanist and an active climber, she and I started talking about what climbers see when they're climbing. And I always had some interest that, where are bats hiding out? And she mentioned that sometimes climbers see them. And I thought, well, that's kind of interesting, but what's the probability of finding bats along routes while you're climbing? So let the idea float in our heads for a little while, and then started searching in Colorado within this website called Mountain Project, which is where a lot of climbers talk about where they've been climbing and details about their climbing. And there were climbers reporting seeing bats, to the point where there's a climb in Colorado called chiroptophobia, which means fear of bats.
Wow.
And the climbers were talking, if you're up there late at night, there's hundreds of bats that come pouring out of the cracks. And then
hundreds.
Yes, the light bulbs started clicking, and we said, well, we maybe want to tap into this user group because they could be harboring a whole host of information for where we'd want to prioritize conservation.
Yeah.
The lead into that story is that the reason this was such a big interest back when we did this in 2014 is there was a new disease called white nose syndrome that hit North America and was decimating bats by the millions in the east, and it was moving its way west. But here in the west, it'd be more difficult for us to see the declines because we don't have hibernacula where most of the mortality was occurring, where bats hibernate. We don't have.
Wait, say that again.
Yeah, we gotta go back to that.
All right, you get me rolling on this.
Hibernacula.
Hibernacula.
Is that like Dracula's cousin? Hibernacula.
Is whose cousin?
Dracula's cousin.
No, and you're not allowed to start bringing in that character in particular when we're talking about bats. Bats already struggle with creating more positive imagery, and Dracula was not one of those. Vampires and Draculas were not one of those that stirred up the most pleasant thoughts. So, as white nose syndrome was moving west, we really struggled in the western states to figure out if that occurred, how would we track it? So that was our interest in working with climbers. SoGES plays a big role in this because Bernadette and another colleague, Sean Davis, who's now a professor at Slippery Rock University, he was working at the Human Dimensions and Natural Resource Department. We pulled together, applied for one of the global challenges. I'm going to forget
Research team.
Research team.
Thank you.
GCRT. Yeah, you got it.
applied for one of those grants, and SoGES was kind enough to give us enough startup funds to host meetings with the climbing organization here in Northern Colorado and sit down and talk with them. Because our first thought was, how supportive would climbers be about providing information if they thought that that information would then be used to preclude them from accessing areas?
Yeah.
Because as white nose syndrome was exploding, it was primarily in caves and mines. And there's a user group, cavers, that like to use caves. And all of a sudden, those resources were restricted. And so we wanted to make sure, sitting down with climbers, they understood why we were interested. We wanted to have conversations about what were the shared interests in conservation and environmental ethics and values. And thankfully, we found that though we had 2 full-day meetings, and over that time, the climbers were so excited they were moving faster than the biologists were.
That's great.
Our logo, this one right here, was developed by Ben Scott, the president of the Northern Colorado Climbers Coalition.
Oh, cool.
So a lot of the momentum that we were skeptical of just started rolling, and
that's fantastic.
It's been pleasant collaboration.
That's great.
If you just let me talk, then you guys don't get a word in otherwise. So
that's okay. Okay, so if you're just joining us now, this is Sustainability Happy Hour, and we are speaking with Rob Schorr. One of the hats he wears is helping to manage climbers for bat conservation, which is this fantastic local Colorado-based organization that works with people outdoors to also conserve bat populations. So maybe you could speak. Could you expand a little on? So that's a little bit of the background. What do you call it? CBC? Is that okay?
Called CBC.
Okay, so what's CBC doing now? So maybe you could speak a little bit about that, and actually maybe speak a little bit about how CBC's been managing during the pandemic. Has that been easy, hard?
Let me start with something you said first. And you said we're kind of a local organization, and that's originally how we started. But right now we have records from climbers in 6 different countries.
Oh, wow.
So
holy moly.
This last month, we got our first one from Africa. So we had climbers in Kenya provide us records, and we added Canada. But we have Bulgaria, Norway, the UK, and the US in that mix. And so it's been a real organic spread amongst the climbers talking about it. And again, even though the climbers are moving fast, as we were pretty deliberate that we wanted to have interactions with climbers so they understood our motives and they weren't going to be scared about why we were interested in the information. It was primarily to find out where bat populations were.
Where do bats live? Do they live everywhere? On every continent? Besides Antarctica, maybe?
Yeah. Yeah, they do. They're found in most continents except for Antarctica. But when you said live, my immediate thought was where are they roosting? Trees, cliffs, caves, mines, buildings that humans make, and even leaf structures. So we have a whole host of bats that create structures from leaves or roost in pine needles or branches. Back to your question, Pat, about where we're going is even though the progress has been, we've kind of moving incrementally, is that the partnerships we've developed have kind of expanded how well we've been able to interact with the climbing community. And one of the big ones, our corporate one, is Preble. Preble recently sponsored us to produce these shirts, and everybody knows Preble from outdoor enthusiasts to climbers. And so it's been great to be able to provide these shirts to climbers when they tell us where they see bats. It's kind of the reward.
Yeah.
But the even bigger one is an organization called Access Fund, which is a group that advocates for keeping climbs accessible to climbers and interacting with them and being able to collaborate with them on some of our conservation documents and outreach has been phenomenal for getting out into the climbing community. Where we want to go is that when we first started this, we didn't envision how much data might be coming in. And so we're just over about 100 or so records from climbers from all those areas. And now we want to have an online database that's accessible to climbers so they can easily submit data, see data. Land managers and biologists can easily see that information.
Yeah.
But we've started even more management guideline writing with organizations like Access Fund to provide that information to land managers so they know how to think about bat conservation in cliff systems or caves along cliff systems. And that's been a great venue for actually making the management into this tractable.
Yeah, when I think about some of this, especially like recreational management, but management's the wrong word, almost like who is doing some of that information sharing, what are the resources people are using, and at least in like the outdoor recreation space, it's harder to have like a clearinghouse, like a one-stop shop, because a lot of these different activities have their own little hubs that they go to. So like maybe rafters have a community that they speak with, climbers will, spelunkers might do something else, you know. And so it seems like perfect that you're able to sort of tap into these different grassroots connections and sort of meet them where they are, because they're the ones that are going to know how to distribute this information and sort of what's relevant. That's fantastic.
The meet them where they are is a really big component. So we, in fall 2019, and back to your question, Mike, about the pandemic, is that prior to that is we took a trip out to Kentucky to the Red River Gorge, which is an internationally recognized climbing area, and hosted another one of those all-day meetings with climbers there. Within 2 weeks, we had 15 new records of where bats were in those systems. But great. Since COVID hit, is that I haven't been able to go to some of the climbing festivals or present at some of the Access Fund meetings and conferences. But so that's been a bit of a challenge for our outreach.
Actually,
Oh, go ahead. I was going to change the topic.
Well, I was just going to say, based on during the pandemic, I guess a question is, did you see any negative consequences or impacts sort of targeted or directed at bats as a result of the pandemic? Because there was this idea that bats were the cause, right? I mean, it's obviously not bats' fault. But so as a result, though, there could be some, I don't know, some fear or something like that. Have you noticed anything like that, or have colleagues noticed anything like that?
Absolutely. Bats already carry this burden of a bad reputation for no real fault of their own, just because they're poorly understood, they're nocturnal, they aren't easily observed. Some do actually use blood as the main food resource, so they've had a reputation. Thanks. They've had a reputation challenge to begin with. So when, like the article you presented, is that the most closely related COVID virus is one that we see in bats and pangolins. Figuring out how that transmission mechanism got to humans is the big challenge. And this information is evolving on a regular basis. And so it's tough to figure out exactly where this is going to pinpoint what could have happened. The bigger issue for all of this, as I try to remind people, is it's not bats' fault. It's that we've increased the opportunity that we have for regularly encountering bats because we're reducing the amount of habitat they have.
Absolutely.
And so these, what they call spillover events, when viruses start using different hosts, are more likely to occur when we don't provide the spaces for those organisms to persist and freely live without interactions from us, whether that be active collecting or just reducing their habitat to where they're more likely to be in we encounter them.
Or if, for example, there's some sort of, I don't know, really large mechanized deforestation machine that's combing through a forest and trying to kill all the trees, and then you've got problems. And this is a Fern Gully reference. Sorry, Micah. Okay, so wait, we've got
I thought you were just broadly referencing modern life.
I am, but also Fern Gully. Okay, so we've got a comment here from Zmox. Am I saying that Zmox right? Zmox, is it EE or Zymox? Once bats have been observed in an area, are there any concerns about limiting the bolting of new routes? Maybe you could unpack some of that jargon. Bolting new routes for non-climbers. What does that mean?
I'm finally grasping some of this terminology. You have to learn in the climbing community, there are specific terms, and the sooner you get acquainted with those, the sooner you can have conversations.
The only one I know is send the gnar. I don't know what that means, but I know that's climber talk.
Send means to climb up, and gnar could be
I'm probably misusing it. Anyways, back to Zmox.
So back to Zmox's question about, is there concern about what could happen for the bat communities in areas that we're bolting? So bolting means it's a sport route that they're actively putting anchors in the wall, and climbers are going to use those anchors. Traditional climbing, they don't use those preset anchors. They're putting anchors in as they go up.
Yeah. Okay.
That's terrifying. Continue.
We really don't understand what that bolting activity means for bats. And one of the management documents that we're working on right now is how should we inform climbing management like this, where routes can be established around caves that are on cliff systems. So if we know bats are using the cave and people are using pretty heavy-duty drills to drill into the rock to put these anchors in, what does that mean for how far those vibrations transmit or how far that sound transmit?
I would not have thought of the vibrations at all. That's interesting.
I haven't witnessed it myself, but I've been working with a lot of climbers who said, yeah, there is some vibration. How much that transmits through solid rock, that's still to be determined. But we really need to start investigating if that's really troublesome for bats or not. The thing I do know is that we regularly, or climbers, I shouldn't say we, climbers regularly see bats along routes that have been bolted. So bats will end up using cracks along those same systems where these routes have historically been established. Whether they were there when they were drilling the wall to create them, don't know.
Yeah. The way the bats have kind of adapted.
Right. And the response that bats have to humans is completely different than how raptors, which is the traditional management issue with climbing and wildlife resources, is that raptors that are nesting nearby can see climbers from quite a ways away, and they'll react, they'll call, they'll sometimes swoop. And so there's some really demonstrable behavioral reaction from a bird like that. Whereas climbers have provided pictures where they're along the route within inches and the bat's just hanging out watching them. And
wow.
I've had records where the climbers go up and come back down and the bat's in that same crack and never left.
Are they asleep typically because it's during the day, or?
Not by that point. Is that they typically are resting during the day, but that close activity, I think they're waking up. Most of the ones I have pictures of, their eyes are open.
Cool.
We even have one where, here's another climbing term, a cam, which is an anchoring device they put in a crack, where climbers put in a cam that's locked in the crevice, and there's a bat behind looking out at the climber, just hanging out.
Interesting.
Okay, so hold on. I'm gonna share a photo on this blog post that you wrote. So Rob wrote a blog post for the SoGES blog, Human Nature blog, and so it's a great post. So you should go read it. But I do want to show this cool picture because it's of a bat that's like zoomed in right on this crack, right there.
It's squeezed right in there.
Squeezed right in there. Can you say anything about this?
I can't personally. I wasn't on this client, except that's how we get. So I think this is Jenny Montaigne's picture, and just a beautiful shot of just how bats use these crevice systems. Sometimes just hanging out by themselves, just taking a rest.
Yeah.
We think that there could be some temperature reasons why they like some cracks over other cracks. We've had climbers tell us, so there's a different terminology here, a thing called a flake. And so a flake is a piece of rock on the front of a wall that doesn't really go into it. It just kind of is in the front. So it's just like a flake on, maybe like a pangolin flake on the other one. So it's just a feature that goes under. Yeah. And those that are south facing get a lot of heat. I've had climbers tell me they've heard multiple squeaking from behind things like that. And it could be that's where females are raising pups. Because it gets really warm and they really like those warm temperatures. But we get a lot of records like this where you just might find a bat hanging out in a crack, just relaxing.
Yeah, and it's you can see its eyes are open.
Yeah, can you zoom on in on its face at all?
Let's see.
And maybe not. Look at its little face. I mean, they're kind of funny looking little creatures. They're adorable, but they're kind of funny looking. So I can see how they're a little misunderstood.
Yeah, I think I already heard Pat volunteering to come out and get his own personal stories when we do some bat monitoring.
Yeah, I would love that. I mean, so can we actually go back? Well, Micah, no, you wanted to ask another question.
Well, I was just going to ask Rob if you yourself are a climber, and have you found bats on routes, and what is that like?
I'm going to call myself a climber because I have climbed some routes.
Therefore, you're a climber.
Really bad at it. It's a struggle fest. I'm blessed with the weakest forearms ever. And my climbing sensei, Bailey Hoover, was one of the students I hired to actually, we had a project. She and Michael Matthews, students at CSU, paid them to go climb in Boulder and Jefferson County looking for bats.
Ooh.
They're phenomenal climbers.
How do I get that job?
Yeah, that was a real popular one.
I have to learn how to climb first.
But
Yeah,
Bailey was showing me how you pinch your foot in and turn it sideways, and that kind of structure for my feet is not working. So I will say I'm a climber, but I'm just not very good at it. And I have not found bats yet on my own. I have relied on the stories from other climbers, and that's fine.
And when they report these bats that they found, I mean, are some of the climbers a little creeped out? Are they excited? Are they just sort of like, there's a bat? Is there any sort of pattern there?
Most of the ones who are telling us are pretty excited about it. They finally found a venue for sharing this information. The records we got from Bulgaria was from a woman who is a biologist and a climber who's been holding on to these records for almost a decade.
Wow.
Just didn't know where to put them. How could we use this information?
Yeah.
I've had a couple that were creeped out because if a bat is intimidated by a finger being pinched into the same space where the bat is, sometimes the bat will clamp down. So I've had a couple that said, yeah, I was in there and I shook a bat off. So there could be subsequent shots coming your way if that ends up happening, but that seems to be pretty rare.
Yeah. I guess, so one question and if you're out there in Streamland on YouTube or Facebook or whatever, this is the SoGES Sustainability Happy Hour. We're here talking with Rob Schorr about climbers for bat conservation, bats in general. Today, a little bit on Fern Gully for all you Fern Gully fans. And one thing, since this is, I'm not going to let it go. Since this is the Sustainability Happy Hour, can you speak a little bit about why do we care, right? Like, why do we care about bat conservation? What do bats do for an ecosystem?
Great question, Pat. And for the longest time, that was always one of the more challenging ones for us to answer because bats are so difficult to study. Is how do we demonstrate their value? We know they're part of the ecosystem. There's likely value, but how do we quantify that for the public? And I would say over the last 20 years or so, we've gotten much better about demonstrating that value to the point where we're tying it to economic value. So if you take an average bat, over the course of an evening of feeding, they can add 50% of their body weight in just insect consumption.
Oh, bless them.
Massive.
Bless bats.
I mean, and then to be flying with that extra weight is phenomenal. So if you start thinking about that level of consumption, is that people have modeled that bats are saving the agricultural industry and pesticide use alone up to $23 billion annually, because they are likely controlling some of those pests that you would have to take care of with some other means. And they've been doing that for centuries. In Texas, the value to cotton was estimated somewhere in the hundreds of millions of dollars annually. And so the better we can quantify that value, the better that people start recognizing, that makes sense. And there are actually other reasons. Micah mentioned Dracula. There's a chemical called draculin found in vampire bats that's an anticoagulant that they've used in heart patients. So to help with human heart issues like stroke, is they've been able to identify chemicals that bats have that are really valuable for doing that. The one that I think we're starting to gain some traction on and understanding better, but still a little bit challenging, is that we're starting to recognize that bats eat mosquitoes. And to say that out loud seems, well, of course they do. It's been a little bit difficult to figure out what bats eat because they grind up so much, and we've usually had to diagnose what's left in their poop to figure out what they're eating. Now with genetic techniques, we can start identifying that some bats, like little brown bat and big brown bat, consume a lot of mosquitoes. So what does that mean for mosquito-borne diseases that could be transmitted to humans? What level of influence does that have? It's difficult to say that there's a big control mechanism because we don't know to what level that plays out in things like West Nile virus that came here to Colorado and had such an impact. But the last one that usually hits home the quickest is that bats also pollinate a lot of plants, bananas, mangoes, whole host of them. And the one that gains a lot of traction is agave. So if you enjoy tequila or mezcal, it is only because of bats. Bats are the primary pollinators of agave.
They should, if I was the owner of an agave brand, I would brand it Bats.
There are now tequila distilleries that are using labels to demonstrate that they are bat safe. Because one of the challenges now is that to produce that sugary substance in the agave base is that they typically remove the flowering stalk to really concentrate those sugars. And they use clones to keep their crops going. The problem with that is that all the individuals start looking the same. If they get hit by a disease, they all get hit by a disease.
Yeah.
So some distilleries are now allowing some percentage of the plants to go to maturity and flower, which is great for bats.
Yeah, definitely.
Right.
So bat safe tequila.
Bat safe tequila.
Get
That feels like
shelves.
get it on your shelves. Okay, all I can think about is Ferngully, so I got to stop thinking about Ferngully now.
That had to be done in the 1980s, right?
I don't know. It's timeless, Rob. It's timeless. It's not timeless. I think it might have been early 90s.
I think the quote that'll come out of this, I think Ferngully was as good as Avatar.
No. Ferngully was better than Avatar. Let's be clear, okay? In my opinion. Sorry, James Cameron. In my opinion, because I know he's watching.
He's definitely watching.
He's definitely watching. If you're tuning in now, please ask a question, or if you've been watching this whole time, you're like, I have this burning question about bats.
Or just say hi. Just put in an emoji.
Yeah.
Put in an emoji. Put in a bat emoji. Are you Pat? You're not wearing a bat shirt, are you?
No, these are hammerhead sharks.
Oh, they kind of look like bats from far away.
If I had a bat shirt, I would be wearing a bat shirt. I had to fight down the urge to buy an adult Batman costume just for this show. I almost had it, but I decided not. Okay, so I guess another question is, we've talked this whole time about climbers for bat conservation, more or less. What else do you do at CSU?
Ooh. Well, because of my position with the Natural Heritage Program, I get to play with a whole host of species.
Yeah.
The one that
Tell us a little bit more about some of those other species that you've worked with.
The one that I was hired to address in the late 1990s, I still get to play with annually. And that's a rare rodent that's found along the Front Range of Colorado. It's called the Preble's meadow jumping mouse.
Really?
Yeah, it's about the same size as the mouse you might find in your house, except their tail is about twice as long as the body.
Wow.
They have if you Google that one, you might find their feet are extremely large. They jump, and they have a darker dorsal stripe. And they're restricted. Their habitat is restricted to creek systems along the Front Range into southeastern Wyoming. Well, where do most people? There we go.
Cute.
Yeah. Most of the development along the Front Range has been close to those same riparian systems, and so their habitat has been dissected and chopped quite a bit, and that makes it a little bit more challenging to keep healthy populations going. Some of the other things I get to play with, though, is that we have a rare amphibians in Colorado, the boreal toad. Been able to play around with those with colleagues at the Natural Heritage Program studying the population ecology. Played around with the largest lizard in Colorado is the long-nosed leopard lizard.
Wow. How big is it?
They're about...
Whoa, really?
That's big.
17. If you look for that one, too, they will eat other small lizards. And sometimes small rodents, but mainly big insects, mainly found in desert systems, but they don't like it when grass systems encroach on their habitat. They're like open predators. They like sagebrush and open viewing for the things they want to chase. And so we were able to study that in southwestern Colorado. One of the ones that I really enjoy playing with, though it's not historically in my wheelhouse, is a butterfly called the Hops blue butterfly. And it was only known from Colorado, though we think we have populations in Montana now. But its host is wild hops. And during the same time that I was playing around with climbers for bat conservation, a colleague of mine, Jeremy Seamers, and I started thinking, well, how would you ever fund research for studying a butterfly? It's just not as charismatic. Excuse my office mate, she just woke up.
Hello, Fred.
Yeah,
we love office mates.
And so being at the Wild Hops' host plant, and the Hops Blue Butterfly's host plant is Wild Hops, well, what better place to tell a story of a beer-specific ingredient and conservation than here in Colorado?
Yeah.
And got Odell Brewing Company to brew a beer called Celestrina Saison, and they graciously donated a portion of that for us to study the butterfly.
Wow, that's great.
Now, when I was poking around your website, the Hops Blue Butterfly kind of brought me to the Linda Hamilton Conserving Colorado Award.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes, I'd love to. So Linda Hamilton was one that early on started supporting our work with the Celestrina Fund. And she liked the idea so much because we started using those funds specifically to sponsor undergraduate research. How could we help undergraduates find their niche in conservation biology? Let them tackle their independent research, let them struggle and develop their talents for this field. And she liked that idea so much that she ended up donating enough for an endowment that's now the Linda Hamilton Conserving Colorado Award that we give out annually to try and fund undergraduate students to take on their own research. And that's been going, there she is.
Oh, great.
Linda, if you're watching, thank you so much for making part of what I do one of my favorite things I get to do, and that's interact with undergraduates that have a passion for doing conservation. And it gets infectious when you see students that really get into this. The student on the far right with me, Blaze Newman, did her master's after this at Clemson, is now a PhD student at University of Georgia.
Oh, wow. That's
Awesome.
great.
And is that the Hops Blue Butterfly on the left?
It is. That's a female with her wings closed, so when they open up, you see more of the blue.
Gotcha.
Wow, but that's still gorgeous.
It's
That's
very pretty, yeah.
Butterfly. Wow, cool. Okay, so we are getting
my office mate out.
Oh, you got to kick the office mate. Oh, okay. That's
Would you say her name was Bella?
Bella.
Hi, Bella.
She's
Bye, Bella.
intolerant of closed doors.
Okay, so we're getting close towards the end of this show. So if you've been watching along and you have questions, please get it in now before Rob skedaddles. But I guess, is there anything that we didn't cover so far today that you would like to make sure you have a chance to talk about? Because, I mean, we do have like millions of viewers, including James Cameron, apparently.
James, call me video.
That's right. That's right.
Live action
I think the biggest message that I always try and remind people of is that climbers make this happen. Is our collaboration is only through the grace and goodness and encouragement of climbers. Is that they have been the ones providing this information, allowing us to understand better how bats use these systems. So it's continuously a reminder that it is entirely based on their good graces that we get this information to understand how bats use these systems. And it's to remind people that it's not just very few people get to see him. Alex Honnold, if you're familiar with him from in his book Alone on the Face, he tells of seeing bats fly out at night while they're climbing. Lynn Hill, who was the first one to free climb the nose of El Capitan, reports seeing bats flying out of that system. So it's just a reminder that climbers get to see bats in ways that us biologists don't, and we very grateful for that opportunity. Okay, we do have a question, final question coming in from Zmox.
Thanks, Zmox.
Do you have any advice for aspiring conservation biologists? Big question.
That's a big one.
That's a big one.
My advice is to try and get your foot in anywhere you possibly can. So get exposure to a whole host of species, kinds of conservation, in part because the field is so broad that understanding what you have a passion for is part of the journey. So if you love bats, or if you love butterflies, or if you love plants, is that getting some opportunity to do those things and figuring out what it is that drives you to be as passionate about your end of that conservation spectrum is really valuable, in my opinion.
It's great. It's a great answer. Okay, so you want to do the final question?
Yeah, I actually have two final questions. Do you have a favorite bat?
Ooh.
I do, but it's not the one from Fern Gully.
Tell me more.
This is a species that's found here in North America. It's called the pallid bat.
Pallet bat?
Pallid. It means
Pallid.
lighter colored, whitish pallid. Its name is Anthrazoas pallidus. But I really like this one. One, it's just this lighter colored bat and has this hog-nosed feature. When you see the front of its face, it kind of looks like a piggy. But the thing that really fascinates me about them is that they're voracious predators.
Oh, wow.
Is that if you've seen pictures of bats carrying really large, well, that's not as flattering. That actually looks like Coda.
I feel like that looks amazing.
That looks like a voracious predator.
Yeah.
You'll see pictures of them carrying centipedes. They're as long as they are. They'll hunt tarantulas. They'll hunt. They've been known to take small rodents on the ground.
How big are they? Pallid bats?
Their wingspan's about so big, 10 to 12 inches.
Oh, so yeah, that is true.
They're a healthy bat. And part of how they hunt, when we typically think about bats eating insects, they're flying in the air, cupping their wings and bringing it to their face, flying in mid-flight. Pallid bats hover, they glean. So they actually land sometimes near their prey and just walk on over to it and grab it, or they pull them off.
Oh my gosh.
There are great videos of scorpions repeatedly stinging a pallid bat, and the pallid bat just keeps going.
No way. Wow. That's like the honey badger of the bats.
Yeah.
Pallid bat don't care.
That's right.
Like
a whole new set of memes.
That's going to be the one I use now.
Okay,
I was looking up fun facts about bats, and I found a great thing from the Nature Conservancy. And they mentioned pallid bats, that pallid bats eat scorpions and that they're immune to scorpion stings.
That's wild.
That's very impressive. Okay, for our final question, Pat, why don't you ask it?
Oh, okay. So last year during the pandemic, even though it's still going, we would ask our guests what's like a silver lining or a bright spot during the pandemic. But this time around,
we're sick of that question.
We're sick of that question. Series 2, that we're in series 2 of this show. What is something you are hopeful about right now? And it can be anything. It doesn't have to be work related, but just what are you hopeful about right now?
That shouldn't be this challenging. I'm just got my head wrapped around bats so much. I think I'm really hopeful. And again, I'm going to turn this back on the project that we're working with. The way the information is coming in from climbers about what they're seeing worldwide now is, I can't help but be hopeful about what this might mean for how we understand how bats use landscapes, vertical landscapes.
That's great.
So I'm pretty excited about what that might mean for how we want to understand the ecology and where populations might be.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's a good answer.
Thank
you so much for being a guest today.
Thank you.
Yeah. And if you're watching and you want to know more about Climbers for Bat Conservation, what's your website?
climbersforbats.colostate.edu.
All right. And we
That's
will
easy.
put that in the chat too.
Yeah.
And thanks again for SoGES for starting this off. It doesn't exist without the words aren't going to come anymore.
That's okay.
Go SoGES.
Go SoGES. Yeah, and we're looking forward to hearing how things keep developing with this expanding network of climbers that are able to send in these observations.
Yeah.
But we hope you have a great weekend, Rob. This has been a pleasure.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Indeed. Thanks, Rob. Happy Friday.
TGIWF. Oh, I said it again.
TGIWF. What does that mean? Windy Friday?
Windy Friday. It's okay. It's going to take off. So we have some announcements, and then we'll let everybody go. We understand that you all have thrilling activities to go participate in that are hopefully socially distanced.
Yes.
Right?
Maybe you'll go climbing and look for some bats.
Yeah, that's something you can do socially distanced.
Before you do that, let's tell you about some of the great things that are happening in SoGES land. First of all, sign up for updates about this show. We email you about who the guest is going to be, when the shows are going to be, and reminders about how to tune in. So if you like this show and you don't want to miss it, sign up for those email updates at sustainability.colostate.edu/sustainability happy hour.
I'm finally getting my act together. I'm going to try this. If I do this here, I click enter. Oh, it says I can't post. There it goes. There's the link. You can just click that link,
Look at that.
which we just said.
We
and
just
now you
said
can
it
just
out
click
loud.
on it. Boom.
Yeah.
Makes
And
it
if
easy.
you want more general updates from SoGES about all of our other events that are not happy hour related, we do have a separate email list for that at sustainability.colostate.edu/engagement/mailing-list. So sign up for that. And then our April Managing the Planet event has now been finalized, and it is going to be pretty cool. We are going to have a Managing the Planet panel called Changing Times in Washington, D.C., Opportunities and Challenges for CSU. And we're going to have the CSU president.
No, and the provost,
And the
new
provost. And the vice president.
And Vice President Blake Naughton.
Yes. We're going to have some big wigs on our Managing the Planet panel.
Heavy hitters.
It's going to be really exciting. They are going to talk about, the new administration, these bills that are going through and some that are, coming up to be decided on, what that might mean for CSU and the challenges and opportunities that might bring. So that is going to be, go ahead.
Nope.
That is going to be April 29th from 5 to 6 p.m. It's going to be a little shorter than our regular Managing the Planets. And you can register. It's going to be a Zoom webinar. And to get to that registration link, I would go to sustainability.colostate.edu/event/managing the planet for 2021. And we will put this in the show notes as well.
We sure will. Okay. Anything else? I think that's it.
I think that is all that I've got for you right now.
Okay, everybody. Well, stay tuned. We're still in the works of figuring out who the next guest is going to be 2 weeks from now, but fear not, we are going to have a great guest. And we will make sure you, if you're signed up for updates, you're going to go ahead and find out that way. And we'll make sure we send it all out on social media. Maybe we'll send out some messages via bats. Who knows?
Passenger bat?
Passenger bats. It's a thing. Maybe it could be a thing. Why not?
Maybe. As your office mate is being a little loud too, isn't she?
Yeah, my office mate, Tully. Hold on, I'll bring him out. Tully, come here. You're being a little loud. Come here. Oh, buddy, here. Hold on. Okay, all right. Okay, he's gonna say, everybody have a good weekend. This
Hi,
is
Tully.
Okay. He doesn't like it when something gets delivered.
Why would he?
Why would he? He just wants to play. Okay. Thanks everybody for joining us this week.
Thank you. Have a great weekend. And go appreciate your local bat.
That's right. And be careful in the wind.
And go watch Fern Gully.
And go watch Fern Gully. Lots of things to do. Sorry, we just packed your weekend. Bye for now.
All right. Bye for now.